Hello and welcome to another edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. On this particular program, we're going to talk about my review and my thoughts of the season that was the first season of Top Gear America. The show, if you've seen my little crappy little show before, this was a show that probably never should have happened. Well, maybe not my show, but Top Gear America probably never should have happened. Why did the BBC want to do another version of their big franchise show on their same channel? Now, with a little bit of look to the past on this deal, when Andy Willman and Jeremy Clarkson revived the Top Gear franchise back in the early 2000s, and it became bigger than big, a huge cash cow for the BBC, they actually tried to franchise out the shows. So Australia had a version, Germany had a version, I think even Korea and China had a version, along with one here in the United States. It was done on a totally different channel, and even though the first couple of seasons were near carbon copies of the UK Top Gear, even right down to the actual segments themselves were just basically rip-offs of ones that they had already done in the UK show. That being said, after just a season, the chemistry between those three guys was pretty doggone evident. And even though they dropped all the studio segments, the reasonably priced cars segments, all that stuff in favor of just doing challenges inside of cheap cars or moderately priced cars, even all the way up to high-end cars, the thing was still really, really funny, really well put together, and it worked exceptionally well. You know, it ran for 8 seasons. A junk show doesn't work that long. Getting back to Top Gear America on the BBC, I thought when they first announced this, hey, there's 3 guys you could plug into this show right now, and this show would hit the ground running. But instead, they went for an all-new cast. Now let's go through the presenters one by one. Obviously, Stig's awesome. It doesn't make any difference. But as far as the 3 presenters that actually speak, Tom Ford was an easy choice. He had been with Top Gear for a while, especially on the magazine side. He's done some BBC work with a couple of programs, car programs on that. He's reviewed automobiles for years, along with all his work back on the Fifth Gear days. If you watch this show long enough, you've probably seen me actually try to give a shout out to the BBC when they were trying to look for new hosts for Top Gear after Clarkson, May, and Hammond. I shouted out they should have just plugged in the Fifth Gear crew, and I thought that show could have hit the ground running if they would have done that particular deal. So I thought Tom Ford was an easy deal. He does car reviews for a living. He does a great job at it, but I really feel that they tried to Americanize him a little bit too much on this show, which is weird because this is the BBC America, and not a whole lot of people are going to tune into this show thinking they aren't going to watch some sort of British television. Now, when it comes to William Fichtner, the kind of main guy, if you will, Hollywood actor, he's suave, he's debonair, he's got all the things going for him, he really looks like a movie star. He did a fine job in this show, albeit he kind of went the same direction every time he was actually speaking, actually the kind of cars that he liked, which is okay, I guess. The real wild card in this deal was Antron Brown. Now, I have a hard time saying a lot of terrible things about Antron Brown. I've watched him race for 15 years or so. In fact, in about a week's time, I'm going to be at a racetrack where he's actually won that particular, well, he's run his class, Top Fuel, the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm pretty certain he's probably going to win next weekend as well. I like Antron Brown. He's funny, he's charming, and he's done a great job inside of the sport of drag racing for promoting the sport of drag racing. And I think this might be the only guy who actually brought in new people to actually watch this particular program, because they actually talked a lot on the network that actually does the drag racing coverage. They talked a lot about Antron Brown being on this show. So if anybody brought new viewers to this, I think he may have. But other than that, I don't know why the BBC decided to even try this thing. Now, as far as the segments as a whole were concerned, they were okay put together. It was a very herky-jerky show, for a lack of a better term. Think of it like this, like a speedboat going screaming down the waters. Yet, when you're driving said speedboat, somebody behind you, some knucklehead, decides to toss out the anchor and bring it to a screeching halt. That's the way this show went. It would get going really good, and then it would just bam, stop on its nose. And it did this over and over again. Some of the segments that they would shoot, in fact, almost all the segments they would shoot, would try to go to this somewhat crescendo, and it would just end without any crescendo, without any, I don't know, it wasn't cohesive. It didn't work. It didn't flow. This program, even when they were throwing it to commercials, felt weird. And it was just kind of strange. I think these guys did the best they could with this, but the biggest problem with this show was the writing. The writing was atrocious. It was really poorly put together as far as that deal was concerned. It just didn't work. The whole show, I think, didn't work. In fact, for a while there, I forgot it was on and I missed like 2 or 3 episodes. It took a lot for me to go back and re-watch the episodes. And after every episode, you just thought, boy, oh boy, that thing was really poorly put together. Now, here's the 2 reasons why I think this show exists and the reason why it looked so poorly. The reason why it looked so poorly, this thing was rapidly put together. In fact, the announcement was made that this group, this trio, was going to do this show this year, the year of 2017. And it wasn't but a handful of months later, they were already shooting segments. And then a couple of months after that, they were shooting the studio segments. And now here we've been 8 weeks down, and all the programs that were built have actually already been on the air. And we're not even to October yet. This thing was stupidly rapidly put together. And I think the real reason the BBC did this is they wanted 2 Top Gear franchise programs to come out in the off-season of the Grand Tour. Yeah, I think they wanted to get 2 programs in before that deal got into season 2. Here's the trick. I think this show may have some legs. It's really going to need a lot of work to actually get this show up to snuff, especially because the very last segment of this program, the last segment on episode 8, was actually done by Tom Ford at the UK Top Gear facility with a bunch of AMG Mercs. It was gorgeous. Well shot, well put together, well written. It was fantastic. It made everything else they had done look awful. So I think the chances of this show seeing the light of day for a season 2 are very slim. In fact, I don't think you're probably going to see a season 2 of this at all. But if it does, I'll be here to talk about. And that's all there was that I thought was worth talking about for this edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. Don't forget to like us over on the Facebook page. Links down in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can do so at any time. You get the first dibs on the brand new shows as soon as they come out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again real soon.